All right, I'm going to call to order January 22nd Board of Supervisors meeting. We will start out with an invocation. I'll take care of that. You stand, please. Lord, please be with each of us as we conduct our business for the county. Please make our hearts full and our minds sharp. In your name, amen. Amen. Well, please keep standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start off with opening board comments. Start off with Mr. Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say I attended a full auditorium yesterday here for the Dr. Martin Luther King birthday celebration. It was great to see the auditorium full. And also, I believe the newspaper was right, and I read that we did not get the Smart Scale project at 207 and 95. And actually, personally, I think it may be a silver lining behind that because it was more of a VDOT project and not necessarily a Caroline County project. So if we have an opportunity to submit for that project again, we should include Coolwater Drive as part of the final solution. And I believe that was all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few things here. First of all, I want to make members of SWAV are here that we're going to be getting a presentation here tonight, so thank you for all that you guys do for the veterans and their spouses and families in Lake Landor. I think it's, and throughout the county, I think it's really important that sometimes when people go off to war and so forth, that the sacrifices that the families make, it's pretty big besides just the veterans as well, so we do appreciate that. I do also want to reiterate the polar bear plunge. Mr. Thomas said he was going in the water, so that's really good news. The polar bear plunge is coming up on February 2nd at Lake Landor Beach. The same day the SWAV event is actually going on, but it's 14 organizations that are involved this year, so we're really, really excited. Our goal is to break the $20,000 barrier in funds raised. So please come out, and it's a really good time. And Mr. Cully is the DJ for that, so that'll be a good time. Mr. Forehand, I believe, is going in the water this year, so it'll be a good time. There's a costume contest. I also would like to thank the board in here, as well as the board inside Lake Landor. I know there was a little controversy involved with tax money and HOA money, even in there, being used for the emergency entrance that connected Direct Road to Crump Drive. I do want to thank this board. We finally got it up and running, and it was used this weekend. Not that we want it ever to be used, but it was used to help someone with a medical emergency. So I do want to thank Fire and Rescue and everyone who was involved in getting that emergency entrance up and running. When Ladysmith Road is blocked for whatever reason, it will serve all of Lake Landor as well. So I do appreciate that. And that is all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Ms. Long?
Yes, I just want to also say the polar plunge, distress warm, but it's a lot of fun, and a lot of good music played by our favorite DJ, and everyone should come out and support these fundraisers if you can. I do want to thank everyone on the school board for starting out our budget season well. We had a nice meeting together and good information exchange, and I look forward to continued good atmosphere with working with the school board on budget this year. And that is all I have, other than to congratulate those that were sworn into the town council in Fort Roll this past week. I appreciate all those citizens willing to serve down in the town of Fort Roll community. So good luck to them in their 2-year stance. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Mr. Underwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, attended the Martin Luther King program last night, and it was good to see so many people out for the program yesterday. Also, On Saturday, the 26th, the Dawn Progressive Association is having a fundraiser to see if they can't revive that old building there, the Dawn School. It's at 3 o'clock at the Second Mount Zion Church. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The 26th, Saturday, 26th.
Mr. Underwood, is that like is it a fundraiser? That is the, like cookout? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Seeley?
I would just like to remind everybody that the Fire and Rescue Awards Banquet is this Saturday, and I think it's a good opportunity to listen to the stories of fire and rescue and appreciate all the things that go on throughout the year, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. I have just a couple items. We'll be attending the Fire and Rescue Board, awards banquet this weekend as well. Looking forward to that. Also, share Mrs. Long's comments regarding the school board. It was a productive meeting. We're starting our budget process, so we will be locking ourselves in small rooms for the next couple months or so, trying to work that through. And Polar Plunge coming up inside of 2 weeks. I'm hoping for and pray for a 60-degree day, not a 6-degree day, and looking for sunshine. So positive thoughts for February 2nd in Lake Landor. So thank you very much. All right, moving along. We have any amendments to the agenda necessary?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the agenda as presented.
Can we get a second, please?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We have our set agenda. Starting with item number 1, presentations and reports. We have a presentation for the resolution in honor of the spouses of wives of veterans. I believe it's Ms. Kaylee Holmes. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you to the Honorable. Good evening. My name is Callie Holmes, and I'm the chairperson of SWAB, and that stands for Spouses and Widows of Veterans. And we're having a Veteran and Family Appreciation on Saturday, February 2nd. I want you to know that that was not the original plan, but we got bumped, so we are having our event. We thank you very much for considering spouses and widows of veterans, and even our active duty families. They go through a lot. They make serious sacrifices. So this is our way of showing that we appreciate them. Every day should be a day to thank veterans, whether you're active duty or veterans. It's not just November, but every day should be a day to thank them. So thank you for thinking of us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Black, did you want to read this?
Where will the event be and what time?
Lake Landor. No tomatoes, please. Just kidding. Lake Landor, Saturday the 2nd of February at 11 o'clock from 11 to 12. We will have brunch. We have a speaker, Miss Joy Garner. She is an active duty spouse, and she will be speaking on active duty life. So we're going to try to support the Polar Plunge, of course, but then we'll also have to be at our event as well. The interesting thing about this year's event is that the Virginia Military Institute in Lexington has donated a beautiful exhibit that will be on display from 1 to 5. So after brunch, we hope that the guests and the Polar Plunge attendees will also come and support, just walk through. It's a walk-through exhibit that's set up like a museum style. So we're excited about that. That will be from 1 to 5 on the 2nd after the brunch, and also Saturday, February 3rd. Heritage Clubhouse, 928 Kent Drive, Lake Landor.
Ms. Holmes, I have a resolution in appreciation for your efforts, and I'll read this aloud if I may. Resolution in honor of the veterans and families, a thank you brunch hosted by the spouses and wives of veterans, SWAV, at Lake Landor. Whereas spouses and family members of our nation's military personnel freely give of their time with their soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen so that we may live in security and freedom as Americans. And whereas we often take these sacrifices for granted and fail to recognize and appreciate the burdens that come from spending so much time apart from their husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. And whereas the strength and resolve demonstrated by our military spouses and families as they go about the critical work of caring for children, sustaining their families, and facing the day-to-day challenges of life in the absence of their loved ones is admirable and worthy of our recognition. And whereas Caroline County wishes to express its gratitude for our county's military spouses and veterans and demonstrate to them how much they are appreciated and valued. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors hereby presents this resolution in honor of the veterans and families thank you brunch hosted by the spouses and wives of veterans on February 2nd, 2019 at the Lake Landor, and calls on its citizens of the county to keep faith with military spouses and families and uphold our commitment to the members of our armed forces to help look after their families. Adopted this 22nd day of January, 2019. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We would love for you to come up and have a photo, please. Yes, ma'am. All right, next on the agenda and presentations and reports, we have an update on the fire and rescue drone program. Chief Garnett.
I thought you were going to do it via drone. Mark, you're not qualified to fly it in a room this size?
Is there a license required if it's inside?
guess those lights can be an obstacle.
It's the Caroline Space Force.
All right. That looks good. I think we're ready. All right. Good evening, Chairman Forehand, the rest of the board members. Happy New Year. Haven't had a chance to see you this year. It's nice to be here speaking to you. Chief Loftus asked me if I'd come and provide you with a brief update on the progress that we've made in our capabilities of our unmanned aircraft systems, our US, our drone team, if you want to call that. And again, this is a county-wide team. So I have a few slides to show some capability with you. I encourage you to break if you'd like to come back. And I have Captains Liverman and Bonham here that are members of our team who have some of our equipment as well that you can take a look at. Some statistics to share with you. We have 15 members now. We are a combination team made up of fire, EMS, and Sheriff's Office members, and we have both career and volunteer fire and EMS personnel. 2018, we logged 41 flights, just under 1,300 minutes in the air. We tend to record things by minutes. And, of course, all of our pilots are FAA Part 107. That's commercially licensed, and we continue to maintain our certificate of authorization from the FAA to fly as a public aircraft and a public entity. So, some mission types we've done. We've been able to engage in a number of brush fires, missing persons. We've had quite a bit of emergency management pre-planning activity. We've had the opportunity to assist Mr. Wilson's office with some economic development non-emergency flights and some training evolutions. That happens to be a picture from a fire that we had trouble locating in the northern end of the county, and the U.S. proved to be very useful there. A couple of highlight pictures for you that I think are very nice. You see a nice picture of Caroline High School there. What we've done is we've begun to film and map to FEMA standards all of our county buildings, and we started with our school facilities first. This provides us a baseline in case we have catastrophic damage to a facility. We can go back and do that. And they're very nice. You see on the right there, I'm encircled a mannequin. This was some training that we conducted in the Milford area, in which we simulated looking for persons in the woods, and again, that's an aerial view. You'll see a pretty picture of some economic development properties. Again, indicate that we've assisted Mr. Wilson some, and we're real proud that the team can support that kind of visualization, and we know a picture is a very powerful selling point with that. And also, we've had the ability to look at some infrastructure issues in the county when they come up. On the right happens to be a picture of a damaged radio antenna in which we were able to do an assessment to get a determination of whether it posed a threat or not and the extent of the damage. And that sure beats climbing up several hundred feet. Also, part of our team effort this year is we were able to finalize a contract that we have with a company called Zetas, Zimbro Aerial, for both manned and unmanned aircraft services. The concept of this contract came about with the assistance of Mr. Seeley some time ago when our team was first getting started, actually before we got started. This year we were able to secure that contract. We were able to do some joint team training with Zetas, and we were also able to evaluate our ability to integrate some of their manned aircraft GIS information into our county system. We also had the ability to work with them to look at some of their 3D modeling capabilities. I'll talk a little bit more about where we would like to go with this company later. I'll share with you some of our new aircraft and payloads that we acquired in 2018. The one that I'm most proud of is that we were able to secure a no-match $33,000 federal grant that allowed us to purchase a Matrice 210. This aircraft was just under $29,000, and we were able to apply the rest of the funds for specialized training associated with this aircraft. The unique thing is that it carries 2 different cameras, so it allows us for the first time to have FLIR services as well as a very impressive zoom camera. This is an aircraft that is IP43 rated, so we can fly in light rain. Yes, sir.
We're Right. I was going to say, explain FLIR.
I'm sorry, sometimes I use those things in there. We're talking about thermal imaging, so it lets us be able to see in total darkness and be able to, as necessary, see. So this is a little video I put together showing some capabilities. First of all these cameras have wonderful visual cameras. This happens to be the wastewater plant behind my office. And these will all record 4K video, very high definition. Well, if you can see the trees moving here, this particular reason I filmed this day was just to test the stability of this aircraft in very windy conditions, and it did quite nice. Some of the thermal capabilities will give you an idea here, and you'll see a side-by-side comparison. This was taken behind the EOC here, and you can see that the firefighters are walking out to class, and you can, of course, see what you can see with the naked eye, the visual cameras recording side-by-side. Something that's kind of unique there is you can see the thermals from the car engines, so you can see who arrived to class late and who was on time, based on the based on whether their motor was warm or not. And of course, you'll see that some of the images are darker than others. The dark-colored figures are wearing firefighter protective gear, so it blocks some of the heat that their body puts off. So it's kind of a unique way of visualizing people walking around. And we took a few moments just to capture some of them walking. You can see, very difficult to see them in the visual light, even with the lights of the buildings. This represents a search using a temperature alarm feature. Thermal is useful during the day as well, and we can tell our aircraft to put a dot and give us an alarm when it picks up a temperature. On the right, there's a firefighter standing next to a tree. This is the woods behind our office. Very difficult to see, and you can see thermal, and that actually tagged it with a red dot on the display of the aircraft, is able to pick up that firefighter. So again, very hard to see that firefighter with the naked eye. This is one of the reasons that we are so very excited about having this thermal imaging capability that we can use to help find a firefighter. And again, I've looked at this on a high-definition television, and it is still very hard to see that individual taking a few steps on the visual side. There's just so many distractions.
Chief Garnett,
Yes, sir.
do you see your red dot on the left right there?
Well, on the display, it actually alarms and paints it as red.
Just making sure we were.
Yes, sir. No, not cold. This is the maintenance building that's back behind the school here, again, taken that same night. And I included this because it was so dramatic, I believe, in what you can see with the thermal imaging compared to what we only had before with the visual. And obviously, as you can see there, only one house light is visible on the right-hand side where we can clearly see the trees, the field, the road. And, of course, what I get a little excited about here, deer that are walking around the field. They did not care much for the noise of the aircraft, though, so don't run out and buy one if you're an avid hunter. They won't sit still, but certainly is able to clearly pick up items that you do not see at all to the naked eye, so we're pleased with that. I included this slide. These were firefighters training on the southern end of this building. And if you'll notice that discoloration that appears to be on the pavement in the thermal side, that is a temperature difference from the water that has spilled onto the pavement. And the reason I highlight this for you is this gives us some capabilities to assess spills in a way that we weren't before. Additionally, look at the propane levels in the tanks here. One of the things that the thermal allows us to do is to get an idea when there's liquid in tanks to be able to tell the difference in lines to get an idea how full a container is. So again, some capabilities that we have, and that's just a water tower south of us. This is a quick representation of the zoom capabilities. I alluded to before we have 30 times optical, 180 times digital. This is over at the county park, and we're zooming down into this trash can. You can read the barcode on that bottle of water up there. Again, this capability is beneficial in case we need to assist law enforcement in looking at an object from a safe distance that we suspect for, if we need to evaluate, say, a chemical spill or a leak from a safe distance. This is something that we had nothing close to this before. Most recently, we were also able to add an additional Enterprise 2 Mavic 2 Zoom drone. And this is a very small drone. I'll give you an idea. This is a rapid deployed model, much smaller than the other, but it has some unique capabilities. It flies well inside and out, and it comes with some additional accessories, including a spotlight and a speaker. It also has some zoom capabilities. And what people are finding useful with this is that they can get into very tight places. And here's an example just of that spotlight illuminating an interior of a vehicle. And you can imagine if law enforcement had a subject they needed to check on in the vehicle, for whatever reason, this might be a useful tool to them, as well as it's very bright, provides us some temporary scene light. Our battalion vehicle will carry this, and again, this will be something that we can rapidly deploy. Another quick slide. This is, again, looking in one of the building officials' vehicles. And I kind of laugh when I saw it. He has a McDonald's coffee cup inside a McDonald's regular cup, but you can see that level of detail with the lights that you would not see elsewise. So it's okay, Kevin. So where are we going to go forward as we move into 2019? We want to continue to increase our regional partnership and training. To my knowledge, we are the only agency that's done a joint exercise with the Department of Emergency Management with their pilots. We're looking to continue to do that, and we're fostering great relationships with the Department of Forestry. They are extremely excited about the capabilities that we can bring in assessing active and post-event brush fires and calculating damage in area. We're going to continue to work with our planning department on the best ways to integrate this data into our GIS system. Our county's GIS tech is extremely excited about this and really has made great advances so far with that. I alluded to earlier that we had secured our contract with Zetas, and one of the areas that we found to be very beneficial is continuing to look for best practices in utilizing a fixed wing. We envision being able to take, if we have a large area of damage in the county, to be able to take a fixed wing, fly over that damage. They geotag a path or a flight path, a different area. Then we can import that into our GIS system, be able to pull up parcel maps, and be able to assign out missions as necessary with our unmanned systems to do greater damage assessment. So we're excited about the ability to integrate that. And the last thing, something that we've not worked on that we see the benefit for, is that is to be able to utilize some of the technologies for payload dropping. And these aren't heavy items, but these are things such as life vest, first aid supplies, emergency radio, those kind of things. Those are things we haven't explored. So be glad to answer any questions for you. If not, certainly appreciate your continued support.
Mr. Black, do you have a question?
Yeah, just one quick one. Thank you, Chief. That's a great presentation.
Thank you.
That's awesome. But I just have one quick question on the thermal imaging. If you have like, let's say you show up to a fire, or there's in a particular building, can you use the thermal imaging from outside the building to see inside the building? Like someone, if you don't know someone's in a house, at night, are you able to use that at all?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, and I'll certainly emphasize. Thermal imaging will not see through glass. So let me point that out, and it will not see through a wall. So some people confuse it, or they get scared that you might have the ability to spy them. What it does as a fire, though, is that it lets us see different temperature spots, and that becomes especially important on a roof because we can get an idea if the roof is near collapse or not, and if it's a safe environment for firefighters, and we can do that from a safe distance to an orbit with that.
Have you deployed it at all to any fire yet, any structure fire or anything?
We have not deployed it to any structure fires. The 210 with the thermal is a fairly new aircraft for us, and we have not done that yet. We are hoping regionally to be able to get an acquired structure and do some best practices with this as well.
Okay. And then my final question is, where is it, like in case it is needed, where is it housed? So like let's say there's a major fire somewhere, one of their businesses and something like that, where is it housed so that we can quickly get it?
All of our 15 members have access to our secure storage room. It's located at our warehouse in Bowling Green.
Okay.
They have 24/7 access to that. And our smaller new enterprise drone that we have, again, that's something that we're going to be able to carry, very compact, carry in our battalion vehicle, so that'll be even quickly deployed. and that's something that we're excited about.
So do you think, because that grant is awesome, that first drone that you showed, is that something you'd be able to get like at, like for example, to have at Ladysmith, to have one at Ladysmith, and to have one at, I mean, the two major fire stations are Ladysmith and
Yes, sir.
Bowling Green. And I mean, nothing against the storage facility in Bowling Green, but if it's something, they're needed pretty quickly, is it something that down the road you're saying, hey, let's put the two major fire stations in the county, let's put...
It's something I certainly would like to see us have easier access to in the future as we go on. Whether I would be successful in getting another large grant like that, I don't know that I'm that good a grant writer.
Sheriff Lippa is.
But he certainly is. But that's something that we have talked about growing in the future, and I agree with you. The access or availability for some of the timely missions, it's important to have that access.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great job.
Mr. Forehand, I have a,
Yes, Ms. Law?
have you and Sheriff Lippa's department done any joint training together?
We have indeed. We've done joint search training, and one of the areas as we go into this year that we're interested in looking, a number of agencies have realized the value of using unmanned services for officer safety overwatch. Let me give you an example of this. If an officer was searching a field with an animal, okay, and there are obstacles in the way, and there are numerous case videos on this, being able to determine if a person is moving around to harm an officer is a valuable tool. Our program is not something that is surveillance oriented. We don't fly this out and we look for bad guys. We don't fly this around and look for drugs. That's not something that we do. It's actually listed as a not approved activity. But when it comes to officer safety events, that's something that we'd certainly like to work with his personnel to explore those capabilities a bit more.
So in that case, Sheriff Lippa could write a grant for some of the little ones with the lights on it, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions? Mr. Thomas?
Mark, I wanted to ask about the pilot training program.
Yes, sir.
Is that just officers of fire and rescue, or anyone who's certified or wants to be certified can be part of your drone program?
Well, we kept our numbers small initially. We initially started with 13. We've increased to 15. And we're mindful of the cost. There is a $150 fee for the examination. So we were mindful of the cost with that. Quite frankly, we have not had anyone approach us outside of public safety and express an interest to join the team or participate in the team. So that actually has not come up.
Okay, and that's kind of what I was
Yes, sir.
thinking. If someone was out there in the public that wanted to do this or had their own drone, if we could do this.
And the reason that we train on commercial level as well as our certificates of authorization is it gives us the ability to do different types of missions. For example, under our public aircraft guidelines, we could not do a mission to support Mr. Wilson's office. But under the commercial 107 activities,
Right.
it's certainly acceptable. And it provides the best standard and best standard operating and quite frankly, the best liability protection for the county as well to make sure that we have folks that are adequately trained under an official credential.
Okay, and the last question is, that's the one in the back is the $30,000 drone?
Yes, and Captain Bonham, play some sound from the small one and hold that up.
Oh, they're both back there.
Tested. 1, 2, 3, tested.
Hold that aircraft up.
Okay.
That's the small one. You can't see it on the table because it's
Right.
so small. And, of course, the big one.
Okay, and the small one was 2,000 and change? About 3,000?
Yeah, the aircraft itself is always a little cheaper, but they get you into buying extra batteries, so you might as well think of it as a package, 28.
28?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so maybe that's the one we could put more in different parts of the county so we'd have something readily, Frog Level, Sparta, Ladysmith, whatever.
That is certainly much faster to
Carmel Church.
deploy.
Mr. Garnett, what is the flight time of the largest unit, the 210? How long, one battery, what's the...
Great question. A lot depends on the payload, but all of the aircraft fly about 25 to 30 minutes. The battery technology has just not gotten better.
Correct.
That's a heavier aircraft. It actually has 2 batteries on it, but we still get about the same flight time.
And is that with all the cameras running as
Yes, sir.
well? How about the smaller unit?
Exactly the same flight time.
So distance for the larger, so are they both still line of sight?
Regulatory, we remain line of sight. Capability-wise, they will fly between 3 and 4 miles before we start to lose signal.
So you could actually, if you were doing a search and rescue, you could actually, do those both have set patterns for search that you can set them and actually do a pattern for a search and return?
Yes, they have the ability to pre-plan a mission, draw out a particular route at a particular altitude and camera angle, and do those flight functions autonomously.
Does that come pre-programmed, or is that something you all have to determine for operations yourself?
The capability is part of the software, but we would need to plan the mission each time independently.
So do you have, I guess, pre-planned for search for somebody lost? Have you thought about pre-planning those, or do you do that in the event based on a case-by-case basis? Is it difficult to do, I guess, is the question.
It's very simple to do. It's a matter of opening the cameras. Because these are enterprise editions, they have the ability to work whether we have Wi-Fi or not. Obviously, they work better with Wi-Fi. But we can pull up downloaded maps that we have, which are equivalent of Google Earth images, outline our area, draw our distances and our path we want to. It's very quick on the fly, and then certainly launch the aircraft, and it's very good about doing it. So it certainly gives us the ability when we do that, the operator or the assistant can spend much more time concentrating on the camera images, looking for the real life situation, as well as determining, okay, I'm here, now I've got to move over 50 feet, and I've got to turn around and come back when the aircraft does that. It, quite frankly, does a better job than we do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Underwood?
You mentioned payload. What weight limits are on the larger?
Large aircraft will carry about 3 pounds.
Okay. Chief Garnett, thank you very much for your
Thank
time
you.
and your presentation. All righty. Next, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that we would want board member would like to pull off of the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I just had a couple of questions on warrants,
Yes, sir.
if I may.
You want to pull it, or
They're just 2 questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
If you want to.
let's give it a shot?
All right, Mr. Cully, on page 29, we list Caroline Recovery for a fairly large payment. Is that for a service since it's listed in jails and not in contributions, or is it just mislisted?
That's where it was budgeted originally, because it was basically a diversion of the jail funds. We were going to save money, and so it's listed in not in contributions to outside agencies.
Okay. And that was really the question, because it was with the regional jail and something else.
Right, and that's where it's actually budgeted. Because of when it started, it really wasn't an outside agency, it was sort of diversion, it's saving us jail money.
Okay. And on page 2, I saw a life insurance payment. And I was a little curious about those. Minnesota Life, optional life insurance. Is that for staff employees?
Correct, and those are paid by so it's deducted out of payroll, and then Beth writes that check, so these things all at the front are checks that the treasurer has written, but it's not, Minnesota Life's an optional insurance.
Okay. Yeah, I know we talked about that before, and I was, not that I'm wishing anything, but I thought that would be something we should discuss at the board, having an option of joining that possibility during budget time. And I talked before to the
That'd be the One Digital, the benefits people, and then we have multiple different, there are cancer policies, all sorts of different things, but it's all payroll deducted.
All right, if we could just look at that at the budget time of the board at least, or board member if they wish to have an option to join in that. Okay. Thank you.
we have a motion to accept the consent agenda? As is?
So moved.
Have a second, please?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We've adopted the consent agenda.
It won't take long. If you want to knock some of the, unless you got a lot of questions, we'd probably 15 minutes for that. If you want to knock off some of,
We think we can probably
got the
Can we go ahead
schools,
and do
hit
that?
another.
We can do 5, can't we?
Let's do 5 and 6.
Yep. All right, item number 5, proposed budget amendment number 3 to fiscal year 2019 Caroline County Public Schools budget.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve that budget transfer.
Second.
Any discussion on the matter?
Since we've discussed it in the previous work session, I think we're all set.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 6.
I have one question, Mr. Chair, when we get
Okay. Well, proposed placement of digital emergency message display at Frog Level Volunteer Fire Department, Department of Fire Rescue. Chief Garnett, is this your potato?
Do we want to do this? Jeff, you got a question?
Good evening again. And certainly, Chief Loftus apologizes for not being here. He had a family commitment this evening. Very briefly, we're interested in utilizing a $12,120 grant with some additional funds from the Fire and Rescue Capital Reserve to place an emergency messaging LED sign in front of the Frog Level Volunteer Fire Department. The sign would be used to convey emergency messages such as weather warnings, shelter openings, and such. There's a concept in your packet, but again, would envision placing the sign on a small pedestal and placing it on top of the existing sign now. Because this requires some additional staff time with the special exception process, we're coming tonight to seek your approval to begin that process, as well as to your approval to utilize those capital reserve funds that we have.
I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
First of all, is the volunteer fire department, is the membership there okay with doing this?
They are. We secured written notice from their president that their membership is comfortable with this, yes.
And my other question is for Mr. Fincham, since we've had discussions about these LED signs in front of businesses, and now we're actually going to put one up ourselves. So where are we in the sign ordinance?
The sign ordinance, we're working on the rest of those changes, but we've talked to Chief Loftus, and we'll work with them to mitigate the bright intensity issue of the LEDs in this process.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Long?
I had concern about the glare also, because at night sometimes when you suddenly come across that, but we'll trust that staff and you will work that out. My other question is, will this sign be connected to Caroline Alert? Like school closings, road closures?
I would
What?
like to integrate the two so it's done automatically, but I cannot really speak until we get down to the capability of the actual sign, whether it will have to be entered manually or not. But those type of messages are messages that we would envision going on the sign.
And then on the other side, if there is a community event, say a Rutan barbecue coming up, would that be allowed?
I would certainly defer to Mr. Cully on the policy of
Because
what
I'm wondering how many
non-emergency
requests you would
messages
get
we do.
if you start.
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
not saying we should, I'm saying if you start doing that, you know, you're going to get everybody else that wants to have it, so.
well, you don't want to
we have a
desensitize the
policy?
public.
Right.
And so I think the chief, and I'm speaking, the intent is to be emergency, another method for emergency notification. And so it's basically going to just have those type of, or be off. So if you've always got something up there, people that are riding by, they're not necessarily looking because it's, the barbecue or it's this or it's that. We want it when it's on, like, for somebody to pay attention. Hey, this is on. What's going on I need to be aware of. And I think, so that's beyond the issue of then you have everybody and how do you stop and suddenly you got competing interests and it'll be so much stuff rolling on there for different meetings.
Exactly.
Now, since he's got to go through a special exception process for this, we can make part of the special exception conditions only emergency use in that sense. So we can, restrict it and make sure there's not a, Floyd's barbecue is next Tuesday or something like that, and Reggie's having a party at his house. It'll all be just only emergency issues, and that's the real reason behind it. On that note,
Or
if
public
you don't mind, I'll
ser-
make a motion to approve
public
it.
would that include, excuse me, Mr. Thomas, public service, like school closing 2 hours late, or such and such a road closed due to a fire? Would that be considered
I think those are things
public?
that we can consider during the special exception process. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with Mr. Underwood, I'll move that we approve it.
All right, I have just one question. The programming, we've all seen the signs these roadway signs that have been hijacked.
Yes, sir.
I can only imagine what will be on that sign. Is that a fairly hard thing to do with something like this?
I think at this day and age, we would envision a sign that we could change remotely. And that's the advantage of having a fixed location and the thing. So messages can be very quickly displayed. Certainly, we will take safeguards that we know how to do. The advantage, certainly, of having an occupied fire station 24 hours a day, if they walk out and we saw an inappropriate message, that we can be immediately notified, and quite frankly, they can walk over and pull the plug.
You can turn this off, right? You
Yes.
can just turn it off.
That result, it slipped my mind that we have staff there 24/7, so that resolved
Now,
my question.
I will tell you that we certainly would like to have the ability to put an occasional public safety recruitment message up. It's at a fire station to put some message that is not the primary purpose of the sign. And if you choose that is inappropriate and we don't want to go that route, certainly we defer to your judgment on there. But I do know that is something that Chief Loftus has thought could be of benefit on an occasion related to that. So I want to be completely forthcoming in that. And if you guys have completely opposite understandings, certainly we will follow your lead. Or we go through the special exception process and it proves to be a challenge for the Planning Commission, again, we'll yield to the experts that do this, but I want to be completely transparent up front.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, for those in the audience, we're going to recess at this point. We have a certificate. We're going to move into closed session. We will resume with our public comment at 7:30.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board convene in closed meeting pursuant to the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff exempt from Section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia to discuss specific legal matters related to litigation filed against Four Winds Campgrounds for violations of zoning and building laws.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And motion carried. We are now in closed session. Mr. Seeley, would you read the certification bringing us out of closed session, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Caroline County Board of Supervisors certify that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from the open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting, which is to certify that this applies in only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor of coming out of closed session, say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
They need to
Mr. Thomas, do you certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Black?
I so certify.
Ms. Long?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
And I so certify. All right, we are at just after 7:30, and we will roll into public comments. Any individual in attendance is welcome to come up and speak up to 3 minutes on a topic that is not already a public hearing. So we have one public hearing, so any comments other than our rezoning requests on the direct property are fair game. Please state your name and your voting district if it's applicable. Again, to be limited to 3 minutes. So please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Gunn. I serve as the Madison District Representative on the Caroline County Recreation Advisory Committee. In that capacity, I'm here to say a few very brief words in support of the Nature Trail and Recreation Park, which is item number 7 on tonight's agenda. I have 2 main points. The first is the level of public interest in this project, and the outpouring of support has been phenomenal. Many residents have contacted either the Parks and Recreations Department or the Advisory Commission to express interest in the Nature Trail and also to volunteer to help with the project. The sense of community has been outstanding, just as we would expect in Caroline County. I also want to mention that on the Recreation Advisory Committee, the enthusiasm and the planning as this project has developed deserves mention. Next, I want to talk about the benefits that the Nature and Trail would provide for the county. The trail would provide a venue for hiking, bicycling, and other outdoor activity. It would serve all segments of the county's population. 2 examples are, one is school children would use the trail. We envision potentially that they would even use it as part of the PE curriculum or for their science classes or for extracurricular activities. The second point is retirees, senior citizens, citizens on a fixed income, and residents whose household budget cannot support membership in a gym or a health club would be provided with an opportunity for a good, healthy outdoor exercise. Our county has no other nature trails. If the request is approved, the Nature Trail would be the face of outdoor recreation for Caroline County. You recall last summer we celebrated the 30th anniversary of Recreation Park. The Nature Trail could easily be the initial phase of Recreation Park's next 30 years. On behalf of the Recreation Advisory Committee, I ask that you would favorably consider funding the Nature Trail and Recreation Park. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Gunn. Anyone else like to come forward and speak regarding any topic of their choosing not already on the agenda? Good evening.
Hi, I'm Chris Waller, and I do not reside in the county. I reside in Fredericksburg, but I have a request in front of the board tonight, and I would like to speak about it. I am part of a partnership that owns a parcel of land at the northeast corner of Carmel Church Loop and Coolwater Drive in Carmel Church. This parcel is currently approved for a 262-unit apartment project, which can be built as soon as it is designed and permitted. Tonight, our partnership and Jen Serber of Serber Development are requesting an expedited public hearing for a partial rezoning and amendment of the existing proffers, along with designation of the property as a revitalization area and a temporary abatement of tax increases only, but just during the construction period. Although we would prefer to follow the normal hearing schedule, the expedited hearing request is required because Serber Development only recently identified the opportunity, and the deadline for submission of the project to the Virginia Housing Development Authority for 2019 is March 14th. The partial rezoning was initially recommended by county planning staff to consolidate two small areas of the parcel under multifamily zoning in order to facilitate more efficient site planning. The primary purpose of the proffer amendment is to eliminate a prohibition of low to moderate income housing in order to enable the property to be improved with a tax credit housing project administered by the VHDA. which is really not a low-income program at all, but more of an affordable housing program. However, the prohibition on project-based Section 8 will remain. Note that although the project would be income controlled because Caroline County is classified by VHDA as being within the Richmond MSA with a benchmark area median income of $83,000, the average family median income limit for residents within the proposed project would be about $45,000, approximately 80% of the average household income for Caroline County. The request for designation of the site as a revitalization area is merely an administrative matter, and the temporary abatement of tax increases will provide the project, both of those requests will provide the project with extra points within the VHDA competitive scoring system. The VHDA program will enable a project ideally suited for affordable workforce housing that will also be a much better project than a market rate project, with higher quality construction features and a greater variety of amenities, features which require much greater investment than a market rate project. This project will be an incredible tool for the Economic Development Department of Caroline County, located within sight of the property, as it will provide new businesses with workforce housing, including the pending Harris Teeter project. The project will also help attract more restaurants, retailers, and service providers to the area. Additionally, the project will be required by VHDA to be managed in a professional manner with stringent standards for tenant underwriting, including credit checks, criminal background checks, and rental history verification. A market rate project would have no such required standards.
Sir?
Can I have about 15 more seconds?
15 seconds.
Yes. Lastly, the project will provide over $500,000 in funding for a new fire and rescue station in Carmel Church, as well as provide a sizable increase in the tax base for the county. I'd appreciate your consideration of my request, and will be happy to meet with anyone on the board or planning commission to further discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else have any other public comments? Anyone else? Last call. With that, we will close public comment. We will move on to our one and only public hearing for the evening, RZ 04-2018. It's a long list of owner and applicants. It's regarding 20 acres for 55 and over community on Durrett Road. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your only public hearing tonight is RZ 04-2018. As you said, multiple owners. Roger Chenault Incorporated is the applicant. They're requesting a rezoning from RP, which is rural preservation, with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land, to planned residential development with a maximum density of 10 dwelling units per acre. On tax map 52-A55, parcel 56, and parcel 57, containing approximately 20 acres of land. The property is located at 7092 Durrett Road, which is 0.37 miles west of Jefferson Davis Highway. It immediately abuts the YMCA and is located in the Madison voting district. The proposed use is an active adult community, which is a 55-plus community, with 74 dwelling units, which comes out to 3.7 dwelling units per acre. The 2030 Comprehensive Plan designates this area as being within the Ladysmith Community Plan, designated as planned mixed-use development. As previously stated, the applicant is requesting this rezoning to PRD to allow an age-restricted townhouse subdivision. The minimum lot size for the development under the current zoning is 10 acres, whereas the PRD allows for a higher density, which would enable the applicant to develop the property as proposed. The applicant's request for the PRD zoning does reflect the zoning district utilized by the neighboring development of Ladysmith Village, which is located directly across the road. The subdivision would be located on the south side of Durrett Road, directly across from Parent Chief Drive in Ladysmith Village and just to the west of the YMCA property. The applicant is requesting the rezoning to construct 74 age-restricted townhouse units as shown in the general development plan, which is included in your staff report. The townhouse units would contain 2 to 3 dwelling units and have ADA accessible features. The applicant has designed the dwellings to be complementary to the Ladysmith Village, and the applicant would extend public utilities to serve the project. The comprehensive plan identifies this area as being a planned mixed-use area, and the residential use would be consistent with the comprehensive plan uses in the area. The adjacent properties are residential to the west and south. The YMCA is to the east, which is also zoned residential, and the Ladysmith Village to the north across the street. You have a number of attachments in your staff report, including the GDP, the proffers, and the applicant's proposed architecturals, although I would remind the board that we cannot discuss architectural features as part of a rezoning application. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this request at its November 29, 2018 meeting. There was one citizen there to speak in favor of the application. The Planning Commission voted to forward the rezoning request to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval. That vote was 4 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention. And as always, the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting are included in your staff report.
All right, Mr. Fincham, thank you for the summary. We'll open up our public hearing, and then we'll address any questions the board has after that. With that, any public comments regarding this rezoning action? We will, again, be limited to 3 minutes per comment. Please state your name and, if applicable, your voting district, and you're welcome to come forward at this point. Anyone like to come forward to speak on RZ 04 2018? Please do so. Applicant, you're welcome to come up at this point.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Staub with Silvercore. I'm the engineer for the project. Do we have the PowerPoint real quick? That was sent. Can I put it up? Is that possible?
Sir, what's your name and company again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jeff Staub. I'm with Silvercore.
STAUB?
STAUB, yes, sir. I can do it without the presentation. The presentation was really just 4 slides. I just wanted to briefly walk you through the process from a design standpoint. When we got the piece of property, it's 3 parcels, approximately 20 acres. It's coming. Okay. So again, I apologize. At the Planning Commission, we didn't have this, so I was trying to walk people through this. If you're familiar, if you've looked at the map, this is approximately where it is. You can see Ladysmith to the south of the project, and then these 3 parcels in green sitting on Durrett. As was just stated, to the east of us is the YMCA building, and to the north across Durrett from us is the Ladysmith project, Ladysmith Village project. If you could go to the next one, sure. So when we looked at the 3 lots initially, we just wanted to see what the yield would be, doing a really straightforward grid on it. We got approximately 100 units. If you go to the next one. Then we did our wetland study on there to find out if there were any environmental concerns. There were some isolated wetlands. They were not contiguous to a water body or a perennial stream, so there was no buffer with it. But we wanted to honor that as best as we could, and rather than mitigate for or destroy any of the existing wetlands, any of the forested wetlands, we did another layout. Next slide. And came up with a layout that minimized and avoided as much wetland impact as possible, and we went from approximately 100 units down to the 74-unit layout that you see in front of you. The main thing being that we, again, went from a much larger density to this lower number where we are less, even though the density allows for 10 units per acre, we went down to less than 4 units per acre. We had an open space requirement of approximately 3 acres, and this is almost 8 acres of open space. As was stated, this will be a 55 and older active adult community, which means they will not be generating any students and will eliminate any burden on the current school system. We will have 74 units in this community broken into buildings of 3, 4, and 5 units, and there will be 2 and 3 bedroom units within each of those. Also stated was the county's 2030 comprehensive plan calls out for this area to be the planned mixed-use development. And we feel that this project will fit nicely into the county's future, both for integration as well as a much-needed component for its aging citizens who would like to stay in their beloved county. We thank you for your consideration in this matter and hope to be a strong partner in your community in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stubb. Does the board have any questions for this? All right, we're going to finish public hearing. If there are any other questions, we'll have it come through. Anyone else like to speak regarding this rezoning action? Last chance. Anyone else? With that, we will close RZ 04-2018. And board have any questions for either Mr. Fincham or the applicant engineer? Yes, sir.
I just have one. It's more for Mr. Fincham or Mr. Shebel. 74 units, they're going to extend public water. Is that 74 connections or one large connection?
That would be 74 individual connections.
74 individual connections?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read here, it says the existing peak hour traffic volumes warrant a northbound left turn lane on US 1 at Durrett Road. Is that going to happen? Or
That would be between the applicant and VDOT. That would be considered an off-site proffer, which again is,
Well, I see it, yeah, on the recommendation. I was just wondering, yeah. Okay.
that would be between the applicant and VDOT and the issuance of VDOT's permit.
Okay. The only other question, Mr. Fincham, I had is on these counts that they do, and I like this project overall, but there's 74 units going in, and it says there's only 8 new vehicles at peak hours. This is a 55-plus community. Now, I imagine not everyone who's 55 is retired. So I guess I was a little bit confused on if I have 75 units, how am I only adding, it says right here,
18 vehicle trips during your
eight,
peak
add
hour.
only 8 vehicles to this movement. It says 49 right now. It says only add 8 vehicles. Maybe my math is completely wrong, but I don't understand how 75 homes. Don't get me wrong. I like the project, but I mean, how do you make people believe that?
Well, the general comment that I would make is that VDOT signed off on the traffic impact analysis, and generally I think is comfortable with that number. You're talking about an increase of 8 additional vehicle trips. That is the peak hour, and you're correct. There's my guess is a percentage reduction based upon the age-restricted community. But that's just during that 1 hour. It doesn't mean that there won't be other traffic during other periods of time. It's just during that peak hour. They're saying that they're estimating only 8 trips during that 1 hour. There'll still be other traffic going in and out at other times during the day.
question. But all right, I appreciate it, Mr. Fincham. Thank you. That's the only other question that I had is the Walden. I saw in here the Waldens had properties, which is I guess Ladysmith Village.
Yes, sir.
They had some questions, or they just wanted to look kind of in line with, I would imagine, with what Ladysmith Village looks like. From what I saw from that letter, read from that letter, sidewalks, stuff like that. Is that included in the project, or?
Yes, there are sidewalks in the project. Again, they have indicated a design for the units that they are proposing to build. We cannot discuss nor require or.
I believe me. I get that. I was just wondering if it was some of these questions were addressed from Walden to them. That's all. I saw that was in our packet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
For him.
Ms. Long?
Thank you. Mr. Fitchum, are there fire hydrants in the design?
That would be part of the utility design. So yes, there would be fire hydrants required in accordance with our county regulations for the location of those features.
And all the electrical lines will be buried?
Yes, ma'am.
Estimated time, once permits are up for this project to start, and completion time, and legally, is there any guarantee or time limits that can be placed? We've seen projects that have been rezoned, and then they sit there and wait 10 years or 15 years. Anything we can do to ensure this project moves forward if they get their rezoning?
I will defer to legal counsel, but it's my understanding that you cannot have a sunset clause in a rezoning application. So you can't give them 10 years to build and then pull their rezoning from them if they fail to do so within that period of time. So to that extent, the answer is no. There is no maximum, there is no time limit under which we could then revoke the rezoning, or it would automatically be revoked.
Would the applicant be able to give us an idea as to a time frame that you envision?
Yes, ma'am. Members of the board, my name is Todd Rogers with Rogers Chenault Inc., the principal of the developer of the project. Our plans are hoping we get rezoning approval tonight. We'll start immediately with the construction plans for the roads and the infrastructure, water, sewer, feed-out approvals, those sort of things. We anticipate those taking somewhere between 6 and 8 months, depending on the amount of revisions and things like that, and then we'll start right away. This is a development that will start immediately, and it won't be phased. It'll be, all the infrastructure will be put in. The housing units themselves will start speculative or pre-sales, depending on how the market goes. But the infrastructure itself will start. The housing units, I'll just have to say that we're going to rely on the market to make sure that those sell. We have very strong indications that we think that we've got a really nice pent-up demand for this product. Over time, though, I want to tell you that our anticipated absorption is about 18 units a year. So if that helps in your time frame, that's what we're counting on, I guess, or that's what our plan is.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I have some questions.
Mr. Seeley? Or who?
Let's start with Mr. Fincham. What is the state law for 55 plus? Do all the dwellings have to be 55 plus? Because it's not clear in what we have. I know what it sounds like, but what does the actual law say?
Yes, sir. I believe the applicable provision of the state code is section 36-96.7. And there are 3 provisions in there that address alternative housing types or age restrictions or whatever. The one that's applicable here would be residential development that's intended for and solely occupied by at least one person, 55 years of age or older per unit. And then it has a subset of criteria. It says at least 80% of the occupied units are occupied by at least one person 55 years or older. There's also a provision in there in another section of Section 36 that allows specific type of housing provided that, and I'm paraphrasing, nobody under who has not reached 18 years of age can domicile at that residence, which is the language that's used in the state code. So in theory, any resident of that dwelling is 55, but nobody under the age of 18 can live at that location or be domiciled at that location. And that's several different provisions of 36.96.
And I guess I'll ask our legal counsel, have we, because my concern is the enforcement is by the HOA. We have been down this path with HOAs that are supposed to enforce their restrictions, and we end up with folks in front of us wanting us to then take over their responsibility because they don't have the wherewithal to do it. I guess that's my first concern. So what you're telling me is no school buses could go in there? I mean, you said 80%. What about the other 20%?
I think the thought process is you could have somebody who's 55, but their spouse might be less than 55.
Correct.
Okay? But you're right. There's the one provision that says 80%. What happens to the other 20%? It would, based upon piecemealing the different sections together, it would seem to indicate that you could have 20% of the dwellings where neither resident was 55, but it still goes back to another provision that none of the residents could be under the age of 18. So it would seem to address the school-age children, but you're dealing with multiple sections of Chapter 36.
Well, yeah, because I'm not near done. One of the observations, first of all, let me just start here, is we have 20,000 approved residential lots in Caroline County today. Approving more to me is, we're cutting into Ladysmith Village that hasn't opened up a section. Pendleton is trying to open up another section, and we have a subdivision that's trying to start just outside of Bowling Green, Mr. Thomas's district, of single-family dwellings. One of my primary concerns is how many lots are currently approved. I guess one of my questions to the applicant is, what do you think the cost per unit will be?
The question was, with the cost per unit, the market prices of the units will start in the 220s and move up to about 300 will be the price of the units.
Because we're looking at single-family dwellings just outside of Bowling Green starting in the 200s is what we're being told. Single-family homes. I understand that. I'm just looking at just competition because one of the things that caught my eye is you said you'd like to have build-out in 2021. But it's written in here, build-out in 2021. I'm just quoting what's in our document, which means it's more than 18 units a year.
Yes, sir.
And I guess my question is, do you plan to be out of there in 2021 regardless?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it may be a misunderstanding there, or a typo on our part if that's the case, but 2021 is very ambitious. I think our market data shows around 18 units a year absorption, which would
the 4.5, 5 years from when we get started. So I would say that year is more like 2023 to 2025 would be the correct time frame.
Because the other concern is Durrett Road is not all that wide. I mean, it's a very narrow road. And we're looking at, 74 units figure 4 trips per day per dwelling. It's a lot of car trips. My other concern, I still have a child concern in all this as well, is because it's next to the school. It's gonna draw people's attention. That's why I'm looking at the other 20%, because that's not what's anticipated, at least from what I'm reading. But the reality is, it's right next to Lewis and Clark.
Yes, sir. And the purpose of the state law and the difference between the homeowner association analogy, which we will have a homeowners association, and what's being proposed here tonight, this is a proffered condition of it coming under that state law. So it's a little bit different, and the county attorney can speak to that from the legal terms. But the other part is not having children or any occupant under the age of 18 there. It doesn't matter if that's the 20%. So if someone comes in and they have no children and they're 45 years old, I'm just using an example, they still can't have children dwelling in that or living in that dwelling. So even if they don't meet the 80% and they fall under the 20%, that other rule of the less than 18 still applies.
And I guess my concern is that the enforcement of that.
It's a proffered condition, so the homeowners association will certainly try to enforce it. The point is the county still has a heavy hand to be able to enforce it, because it's not a restriction, it's a proffered condition, which is still a restriction on the land, but a proffered condition runs with the land, as opposed to the restrictions and covenants can be changed over time with the homeowners association. So it's a slight difference.
The other question I have is, in the approved traffic development, it kept referring to figure 11, which we don't have. I have no clue what that means. And the traffic concerns I have are, I'll go along Mr. Black's lines. I see significant impact with that many dwellings, north and southbound, de-acceleration lane and a left turn lane, which we can't even talk about. But we have similar concerns up Route 1 at other subdivisions that need those same kinds of amenities that weren't done when they were built. And I have enough traffic complaints from Route 1 to, I won't even list them all. But that is a huge concern, and I'd like to hear VDOT's follow up on that. And I'd also like the county attorney to at least leave together those sections for us and let us know where we stand. I don't want to get to a situation where there's multiple sections in the code, and then when we're done reading them, if this, then that, well, maybe this, because then we end up, as the board, with the sheriff's office and property maintenance being the ones that have to solve that. I'd just like to make sure that that is actually tight and can be adhered to, because that's my primary concern, because I see this and I just see school buses. Parking. Is there going to be on-street parking allowed? Is that going to be something that you're going to restrict, or something you're going to, overnight, not during the day?
Two things with that. One, there's on-site parking, so there's driveways with garages. All of these houses have garages, so that's one thing. And then there's also driveways that lead to the garage. The road width requirements and the road width that we're going to be putting in will allow parking on one side of the street.
Mr. Thomas has a unique situation with parking on the street that we've been asked to address because the homeowners association can't.
Right.
And this just, to me, sets up, even though it's 55 plus, I'm a little older than 55 and I'll be working a long time yet. And many folks, just the cost of things is forcing everybody to work longer. What do you do with work vehicles that are then parked on the road?
Typically in our homeowners association documents don't allow certain type of commercial vehicles to be permanent meaning in the, even in the driveway, unless they're in the garage. So even commercial vehicles are not allowed in the development.
I'm just making sure that Reggie was going to go.
Mr. Rogers, I just wanted to know if you in fact have built a facility like this before, and if so, your experiences with some of the questions that we've asked about your 80-20 rule, as well as the enforcement of the HOA within that facility.
Yes, sir. So we've built, this will be our sixth community that we've done similar. We have two of those, well, let me back up, similar, because we have 4 in Hanover County that we've done, and we also have a Property Owners Association management team that's part of our business, and that we manage that through that management team. But our experience with the 80-20 is we hardly ever run across it to where anyone that applies for it, because they have to apply for that, and on the initial sale and even on the resales of these, if the association management's doing what they're supposed to, you may know that you have to have disclosure packages sent to a buyer that comes in. They have to have a disclosure package. When they request that, part of that request is they send the copies of driver's license indicating their age before we even distribute the disclosure package. So that way that we know the age of the prospective buyer at that point, because they haven't closed yet.
And your build-out experience in terms of the size, and is it relatively the same size, and what was your build-out there?
Yeah, so we have some 4 of the properties or communities are in Mechanicsville area of Hanover County, which is a more dense, higher rate as far as market goes. We have a community there that's selling about 4 houses per month. And then we have another rural type development similar in King William County. And that is selling right at 18, about the same density or the same velocity that we anticipate here.
I don't think you answered the question about the build-out time, from the time you started the project until...
Yeah, so, and it just depends on which one. So I'll give you an example of the King William property. We had a total of 96 carriage homes. We're just now finishing our last building of those, and that started in 2012. So 96, 7 years. Again, close to 18 is where we are. So that's how long it took for those. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And as far as the property maintenance the homeowners association would actually have to hire your company to actually be the property maintenance company. So there's no guarantee you'll be the property maintenance company once you have a homeowners association.
Well, the homeowners association's formed day one, so it's formed right when the subdivision plat's recorded. So it's formed before any of the buildings are built. The initial association management is handled by us, and as eventually you'll get board members within the community, as the transition goes to a turnover, those board members can then hire another association manager. But we've been fortunate so far that we've been able to retain those relationships, but there's no guarantee. Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct.
I think those are my questions.
Mr. Thomas, you had a question?
I had just one more, and it was something that you said, Mr. Rogers, about the the roads and sidewalks. You're going to build the infrastructure first. You said, is that a hope or is that a requirement?
Well, it's going to be a requirement in order for us to start building houses. So,
I mean, all of it as a requirement, or just,
no, well, so what happens in a lot of townhouse communities, your drainage is going one way and your water and sewers coming another, and your roads are coming potentially one of those two ways. So economically speaking, it's a whole lot better for this size project to do that. If we were doing
do all of
200,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
if we were doing 200, I would say we would phase it. But this being the 74, we would do all that at one time. It
Okay.
wouldn't be phased.
and that's really what I wanted to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question for council. On the homeowners association, they are recorded on the deeds, so if the property is sold, the new buyers are obligated to the same conditions? Is that how that works?
Generally, the property should have restrictions on it. It should require them to belong to the homeowner. It depends on how good the draftsman is in a lot of ways as to how effective those documents are. But generally, yeah, all of the properties would be restricted, and the purchasers, the owners, would have to abide by whatever the deed restrictions are, whatever the covenants are that are recorded at the time that they purchase the property. They should be required to belong to the homeowners association. It should be able, with certain types of voting and certain majorities, to be able to make changes in the covenants and restrictions and that sort of thing. They would have to abide by the state's age-restricted rules regardless.
And thus, that brings me back to you. You say the homeowners association is activated the same day the land is recorded and platted out. So therefore, every homeowner, as soon as they buy one of these homes, is joining and aware of the homeowners association.
Yes, ma'am. And they're required to join the homeowners association. A, B, once they sign a contract, normally within a week or so of them even signing a contract, before they've closed on the dwelling, they will get what's called a disclosure package, which discloses all the covenants, all the restrictions in there. That disclosure package is actually governed by a state agency to make sure that it contains certain things in there that has all the criteria of the homeowners association, how they get insurance, what it covers, all those sort of things. But that packet is given to the homeowner after they sign the contract, and then once they receive that packet, they actually have a right to rescind the contract if they don't like something in it within 3 days of getting receipt of that package. So if they haven't read that, which I'm telling you that happens more often than not, so I get all that. But I will also tell you that it happens more often in this type of community and age-restricted than some single-family detached dwelling neighborhoods that are not age-restricted. This buyer seems to like to read most everything you give them before they buy.
And resale, the process is the same?
Exact same. So the resale process has to go through, and whether this makes a difference to y'all with all the new lending laws that have come in through the last 5 or 6 years, the mortgage company actually wants to see where the buyer has accepted those homeowner association documents.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fincham,
Yes, sir.
VDOT.
VDOT.
When do they make the final determination on what needs to be done, or do they make a determination on what needs to be done on Route 1?
When we get the construction plans and site plan for the development, it is again forwarded to VDOT for their review, and ultimately they're the ones that will issue a land use permit.
So they're the ones that make the determination of a left turn lane or a deacceleration right turn lane,
That is correct.
and there's no way to know that ahead of time.
No, sir.
Just want to ask, because
Understood.
we hear from residents residents off of Route 1 all the time that they can't get into, or they're stuck on Route 1 and they're backed up in traffic, and we end up being the blame for that. I just
Yes,
want to
sir.
avoid us being blamed. That's why I want to ask.
I understand.
Any other comments by the board?
I was going to make a motion. I would just like to have our council go through in the 80-20 rule on this to make sure that the state code is clear and that we're in safe ground. That would, till the next meeting.
So your motion is to table until February 12th meeting?
That would be my motion, Mr. Chair. I don't recognize it's your district. It's just my
No,
concern.
that's fine. I mean, I'll second it, that's fine. Any other discussion? All right, a vote on Mr. Seeley's motion to delay till February 12th Board of Supervisors meeting and decision. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay. Let's do a roll call vote. Mr. Thomas?
Vote nay on the motion.
Mr. Black?
I vote nay.
Ms. Long?
Nay.
Mr. Underwood?
Nay.
Mr. Seeley?
I vote aye.
And I vote aye. Motion fails.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the zoning for RZ 04-2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Do a roll call vote. Mr. Thomas?
I vote aye.
Mr. Black?
I vote aye.
Ms. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote nay, but motion carries. With that, we will jump into item number 4, unfinished business, updated for the Virginia Sports Complex compliance with SPX 02 2013, issue being a connection to the public sewer system. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have the staff report in your packet, along with a number of attachments related to the previously approved special exception permits on this property. At issue is compliance with what is now condition number 19 of the current special exception permit, which required public sewer to be extended to the site by the owners of the property. That connection was to have been made in September of 2017, and if you will recall, we met with the board to discuss the issue. Pursuant to that discussion, a notice was sent to the owner of the property, who has since had not one but two sets of construction plans for that interconnection designed and approved by the various entities. During the process, the current owner advised us that he was again entertaining the idea of selling the property, leaving us in the exact same situation yet again with a prospective new owner and the failure to comply with the condition to connect to the public sewer system. I won't read the entire staff report or comment letter to you. I understand some of you have had some contacts with the prospective purchaser of the property, and it's staff's position that the public sewer connection would actually benefit the use of this property, and that we believe that the board should go forward with the requirement for the connection to the public sewer. I would suggest to the board that if you want to consider allowing some additional time to connect to that sewer system, then the appropriate action would be for the owner to request an amendment to the special exception permit so that that time frame extension can be vetted by the Planning Commission and then ultimately the Board of Supervisors through the special exception process. Otherwise, I believe the appropriate action would be to go forward with the revocation of the special exception permit.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Mr. Fincham a question?
Proceed, Mr. Thomas.
Okay. The applicant is behind you. And I want to ask you, since this is really a staff report, the pump and haul that the applicant is still using has been used every month for the past 12 months or so, even with the new ownership?
I think Mr. Shebel would be the appropriate one to ask that question concerning usage.
Right, because Mr. Shebel in Public Works or the wastewater
Yes,
treatment.
in theory,
would
it's
get-
our pump and haul permit, but it would be hauled to the wastewater treatment plant.
Mr. Shebel?
I can't tell you if it's been used every single month. I can go back and pull a report, but they do. We just pulled a report last week for this facility just to see what they've done. So they typically dump every month, multiple times during the month, during the summer months. During the winter, it slacks off depending on their activities.
Right, right.
But they've been pretty consistent.
And the cost of one of those dumps is how much?
To our facilities, $16 and something per thousand, so that's fairly inexpensive.
How much over the year has it cost? Wasn't it like 30,000 or something like that a month?
That's actually what he has to pay to the hauler. So they've got typically it's $300 a load.
So it's $3,600, not $36,000.
They've been paying somewhere around $22,000 to $24,000 a year.
Okay, that was the point. Okay. All right. I mean, to me, yeah, to me, the property is worth nothing if we pull if we pull their special exception. Considering we've got a new owner, he's trying to do some other things. We might want to at least give him a chance to put together a plan. And I was going back to this. The first plan was 2003. The second plan was 2009, and I think we gave a couple of extensions in the last couple of years, but we may be at the end of our extensions, but at least based on the conversations the new owner has had with all of the board members, I believe he has some plans that would make it an excellent facility and possibly give us a chance to finally make that connection.
Mr. Fincham, has the facility transferred officially yet?
I did not get a chance to look today, but as of last week when I looked, it was still in Mr. Radvinny's corporation.
So it's not officially, okay.
Mr. Shebel, is this 100% pump and haul? There's no leach field at all on the facility?
There's none at all, that's correct.
How large of a storage capacity does it have?
They've got 2 tanks that have been installed that they fill and then they're supposed to monitor. We did have an issue with the previous, not Mr. Radvanny, but prior to him, of not actually pumping the tank and it running down to the woods and other issues.
No capacity?
I do not know off the top of my head, no, sir.
Mr. Chair, can I have
Ms. Long?
Yes. Can we find out from whoever the current owner is what the guarantee or what type of guarantee we could get that this sewer line's going to be put in? I understand changing of hands That takes time, loans, the construction takes time. But we have extended this thing since 2009. I like to give chances, but I don't like to just be used. And we want this to be a success. The gentleman that spoke to me, who was either buying it or thinking of buying it, has some wonderful ideas, but that line's got to be put in. So regardless of if it is the current owner or the future owner, how can we, if we give them an extension, how do we guarantee that we're not back here in a year asking for another 3 years, like we did in 2009, 2011, 2014, 2017, and here we are again. My kids never got that many chances. Oh, no, they didn't.
Do we know, just out of curiosity, Mr. Schiebel, I've heard some numbers that just seem just completely unrealistic. Have we heard a number of what the cost of the sewer line is to install? Do we have any idea of estimating what the cost is?
My understanding is just over $400,000.
Remember, this connection is being made back to Carmel Church.
And that changed in the last couple of years, right? Didn't the route change in the last couple of years, or no?
The original route was to parallel Route 1.
But then they put fiber in, then they couldn't go over the fiber, correct?
Right. They had
so
some
had they originally done
constructability
it, had they
issues.
originally done it when it was supposed to, it would have been actually cheaper to do it. Yeah, it would have been cheaper to do it way back when, because you didn't have the fiber in the ground before. Now you can't put the line in. So because there was a hesitation, now it's costing $400,000 as opposed to the original. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, but that's over 10 years.
That wasn't even the owner before him. Right, Mr. Fincham? That was when it was, I think, John Henry was the owner?
Yes, sir. And I don't recall the exact date that the fiber line was installed along Route 1, but once that was installed,
that was
the original route.
Right. He was the original owner. And then, right, and then Mr. Radvani is the second owner.
Correct.
And then this gentleman is the proposed third owner. But that original time frame was under the original owner who never did it for whatever reason.
The original plans actually called for an on-site sewage disposal system.
Right.
The idea was that they would put a dosing system and a drain field underneath the ball fields. Health Department would not approve that because they had to water the ball fields as well, and they were concerned that it would damage or destroy the sewage disposal system.
Yeah.
So in response to that, and not having any other drain field location on site, necessitated the original, well, to step back. If you remember, in order to open, the board had to agree to the pump and haul permit.
Right.
To get the owner off of the pump and haul permit with one of the subsequent special exception modifications, the condition was imposed by the board that they connect to public sewer.
And now, where we are now is the county fair and the property owners next to the county fair have granted easements for the route to go to Route 1 so they can connect. So because there are those easements that were granted for free, is my understanding, it's more important that we connect to the county system through those easements because it also gives the county fair water or sewer. So there's more to it than just, oh, you didn't do something 10 years ago, and it's not even this prospective owner's fault or the previous owner's fault. It was something, for whatever reason, 10 years ago.
Any delay would affect the county fair. Yes, sir.
Right.
Mr. Fincham, on the, I think there's like a whole bunch of extra property that's there besides just what's currently correct. I mean, that whole property, there's ball fields when you go down there and so forth.
There's
There's a whole bunch of woods and so forth back.
There's another 100 acres.
Yeah, there's another 100 acres. There's no place for, I'm not saying that, but there's no place for a drain field and 100-plus acres?
I think at the time there was a question about where it would be located, and again, the cost to install the drain field for the intended use of the property.
They haven't bought it yet.
Right.
They would have to buy that 100 acres. But actually, they don't own the additional 100 acres. It's an option, is my
I think,
understanding.
yeah, there's other land there, but some of the land up there is rocky, and there's some terrain issues as well. So at the time, my recollection is that they did a quick and dirty analysis with the health department. It was deemed that that solution was problematic because it couldn't go in under the ball fields.
Is there to the, I don't know.
Actually, I need to get Mr. Seeley in. He's been at.
Here's my real concern. Who is Mr. Radvani?
He's the current owner.
And he's not here, correct?
That is correct.
Because in our packet, it says Mr. Radvani indicates that he has secured the financing for the interconnection and has placed the funds in escrow for Mr. Mills to use for either the sewer or other improvements. Mr. Mills has indicated a desire to amend the conditions. So the money's there. So if the money's there and the design is there, the easements are there, I mean, doesn't it make sense to move forward with that? Because the easements could go away. Something could happen to any one of those properties, and now you don't have a way out. The money's already secured. Why wouldn't we want to get this done while the money's already there? Well, it says that the money has been secured, and the money's been placed in escrow. Is that true?
That was what was stated to me by Mr. Radvani. We don't have direct control over that money.
I understand we don't, but
Yeah,
what I'm saying is this is what we've been told.
That is what
Everything
we've
else
been
is in
told.
place. Every property owner's ready for this to take place. Mr. Fitchum, would you have any idea how long an extension the new owner would need on the pump and haul permit while he gets the sewer lines in?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How long an extension would we need to put on a pump and haul permit to give him time to run the sewer lines, which is what eventually is going to make this a successful project? If it's going to increase in the number of events and the people, they're going to go broke just pumping and hauling that stuff. They could have already paid for the sewer line just about by now.
You're asking me, and I'm going to look at Mr. Shebel.
The applicant is here. Mr. Mills, would you mind coming up?
Well, I think that's a technical question. What Ms. Long is asking is a technical question. If they were to start construction, how long will we need to extend the pump and haul permit to allow that construction to be completed?
It really depends on how the contract was laid out. I would think that they would be able to actually do the construction in a 4-month window. They still have to get their permit through VDOT and do those kind of things. So realistically, I would think 6 months ought to be more than enough time, but it really depends on how the contract was written and how much time the contractor was given to do that.
Mr. Shebel, this is a grind, pumped, small line, small diameter, pumped force system, right?
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, now I believe the proposed new applicant gave us all the same story about what he wanted to do with the fields and installing AstroTurf and those sort of things. But in none of that discussion was the fact that there was money in an escrow account for the sewer. Is that correct?
That's correct. It wasn't earmarked necessarily for the sewer. So when he had obtained financing, and this is what I've gotten from the bank, I don't have documentation on this, but this is what the bank told me. It was not earmarked for any particular project.
But he had financing for up to $300,000?
No, I believe it was 458.
So
Okay.
he has financing in escrow.
I don't know what type of account it is. I've been told by the bank that, but I don't have documentation to show you. I would have sent that to you as well. But my
Okay.
understanding is the bank has an account, $458,000 for upgrades to the facility. So no specific type of upgrade. But
In your discussions with me, and you said you would like to make the fields AstroTurf.
Correct.
Were you intending to use that $458,000?
Correct. You can't do both things. The property's
Okay.
not worth enough to do both things.
Okay, so
Not
now
currently.
we hit the crux of the real problem. You want to use the money that's in escrow for upgrading the facility for AstroTurf Field.
Yes, my apologies if I didn't make that clear.
And,
The
okay,
money is there
that's, all right.
for upgrades to the facility.
And you won't have any money, if you use all that money for the sewer system, you won't have any money to AstroTurf Fields, which
And if you
based
can-
on your business plan gives you year-round access and multi-sport access, soccer and everything else. And
Correct. And I can't
much lower
market to
maintenance.
other teams because I think it was Supervisor Silly who said, why don't we move forward with this? The money's there. The
Okay.
problem with that is this. If we build a sewer, I can't market to teams around the country, hey, come play on our field, come play at our field because we have a new sewer line. I can market because, they're not coming. I can market to teams around the country when I say we've got turf and lights, because a big thing about baseball is you can't play when it's raining or if it has rained. So teams will come a further distance and they will pay more money if they know I'm getting my games in. You have turf and you have lights, you're getting your games in. So if they've got a choice, whether you're a local or if you're in Oklahoma, you've got a choice to go someplace. You're going to go to a place where you know you're getting your games. And I can't tell you how many times we've been to tournaments before, and you get there Friday night, and it starts raining about 2 o'clock in the morning, rains till noon on Saturday, and they cancel the tournament. And you've already paid for 2 nights hotel and made the trip, and tough luck.
But you're paying what it's costed for pump and haul, for the increased use in your facility, the increased cost in pump and haul. You wouldn't have that if you had the sewer line in, and the payment's a moot point because it's already, you're paying for it either in cash up as you go, or you put it in the ground, because if you increase the use, you're going to increase the pump and haul, which is going to increase your cost because you're paying for every gallon you haul out of there.
Correct.
So
And
to me, at some point, you say it doesn't increase the value, but it's going to increase cash flow because you're not making additional pump and hauls because you have a bigger crowd. I mean, it's a catch-22. The other
It's really one before the other because one will bring in more revenue over the course of, say, 3 to 5 years, and then we can do whatever we need to do, whether it's a sewer line or, and one of the things that I made a note of, part of the reason why we couldn't do, or they couldn't do a permanent drain field was because of the irrigation of the current fields. When you turf a field, you don't irrigate it. So what we're looking for is an extra about 60 days to be able to do a study to find out what all the options are, and then come back to you guys, March 12th, I think is the meeting, come back to you guys and say, here's what we found out, and then we make a decision.
Here's the situation, though. You come to us and say, "Hey, we're gonna do alternative drain. We're gonna do it this way," and that fails 2 years down the road. And then you say, "Oh, we got to put a sewer line in," and now your next avenue is blocked by yet somebody else that won't agree. You've already lost one avenue, which was parallel Route 1, because of fiber lines. So what you're saying to me is you're looking at 3 to 5 years down the road before you come back to us and say, "I'm ready to put in wastewater."
Okay.
Possibly. I would like
All
to
right.
also explore the option
I think
of
I know
that,
where we need to
that
go.
drain field that couldn't be done before because of the irrigation issues. Now with no
Yeah.
irrigation issue, we don't
All right.
have that.
This is I think what the county wants and has wanted since 2003 when this first came in was for your project or your future project to eventually connect to the county sewer system. So that's still a goal the county has. I think what he is saying is from his business perspective, he wants to make sure he can market his facility to get increased revenue so that eventually he'll be able to connect to the sewer line. So I think what we need to do is have you, I guess you're going to eventually make the complete purchase.
Right. This
But-
is one of the contingencies
Right.
of
The
and
complete
actually
purchase.
the big one because, in all honesty,
All right.
there's been 2 people who've tried to do this with the current business plan, and it doesn't work. That's why we're here now.
Right. Now, and again, you know, I was here in 2003. At 2003, the sports park was part of the district that I represent. I thought it was a wonderful idea. I'm not Nostradamus, but I told the original owner to finance it. The money they use on Pump and Hall, they would have paid the financing, sewer line, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what we need to do now is give you a couple of months to put together your plan based on discussions with Mr. Schiebel and Mr. Fincham, understanding the constraints. The county still wants you to eventually connect to the sewer line. You know, how we do that, your plan may be a little longer.
I don't know that we have this extreme desire to connect the sewer line. We just want to get him off Pump and Hall. That could be his.
Well,
his.
If the county has gotten easements for the county fair, I'm pretty sure the county is saying they want you to connect to the sewer line, so the county fair will be connected to the sewer line.
There are some synergies there. I agree.
Which is, I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Well, the county fair gave easements. You know, whether we do that or not, but really give him till March, which is the 60 days or close to 60 days, to come up with a plan of how he can eventually connect to the sewer line. It may be a 5-year plan. It may be something else. But that's going to, well, we can just table it until March 12th. I just want you to understand what we're looking for, because that's the reality of it. So we table it till our second meeting in March.
Could I ask a question? That is, I would like to bring back a report that has multiple options. I understand where the county is coming from, but there could be other options that may be beneficial to both parties as well.
Understand.
I just want...
You bring a plan back with multiple, and you ever been to New York?
Yes, sir.
You ever play 3-card money?
It's
not a good idea, but whatever plan you come back with, you're going to be looking for the Red Queen, okay?
Yes, sir.
And I just told you where the Red Queen was when you connect to the county. But you come back with whatever plan you want to come back with, okay? So,
Sure.
Mr. Chair, if it's satisfactory with you, why don't we just table this until our second meeting in March, which will give him 60 days or close to it?
Mr. Mills, are you agreeable to that?
Yes, that's what
Mr. Mills, you will be in touch with Mr. Schiebel, correct?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And Mr. Fincham, and they will help you try to figure out a way that's beneficial to both of us.
Okay.
And please understand, we really want you to succeed. We want this project to succeed. It's just we've been yanked around for many a year.
I have gone back and watched many YouTube videos of these meetings, and I will agree with you. So,
Thank you. And we will look forward to finding out what kind of a great plan you can
Made a
bring us
motion,
back.
did you, Mr. Fowler?
We just wanted to table it until. And the other thing, Mr. Mills, is we want you to be successful. That's why you're here. We really want you to be successful.
and that's also one of the reasons. I want you guys to know also, this is not me that's doing the study. I've hired an outside firm that has in excess of 300 different properties similar around the country to help me do this. This is not, Sean's going to be out there walking the property trying to figure out how to make this happen. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Mr. Chair, do you need a motion to table? To a second?
We need a second.
Yep, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Oh, aye.
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 All those opposed?
And one abstain.
All right, motion carries. We'll readdress on our March, let's see, March 2nd.
If we could do the March 12th one, that would be perfect. Instead of,
You want less time instead of more?
I do. March 26th, my son has a baseball game in Florida that I would like to be at. So if I can come the 12th.
See, if you had turf field, you could be playing here.
Amen.
March 12th it is.
Part of the goal.
March 12th.
Thank you.
You
Thank
want
you
to
very
be
much.
out
I'll
of here
amend my
in
motion
March.
if we need to do
You don't
that.
want to be playing baseball in Virginia in March.
Yes, you do. Oh, spring
Little League
baseball.
starts in February.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Item 7.
All right, we are, thank you, Mr. Mills. Item 7, proposed biking, hiking trail on Devil's Three Jump Road adjacent to County Park. Mr. Shebel.
Looks like somebody.
Mr.
Chairman.
Shebel, I want to know how this path got to look like.
Well, I can tell you exactly how that path got like that. There was a day that I got a phone call from the chairman saying, Mr. Shebel, can you meet me at the county park? I've got this grand idea. And we met out there one day.
And a very large bottle of something. No.
And it took about 2.5 hours one day, and we walked the trail trying to figure out what the property looked like and where would be a good place. We ended up meeting back out there another day with flags and all kinds of markers, and we walked through and said, here's where we're going to put the trail. Thought it'd be a great place for it. We talked about how we would get to this.
Okay, can I make a motion?
Sure, yes, sir.
Can I make a motion?
I'll second.
All right, I think we're going to,
We like this idea.
really, it's based on Mrs. Gunn's comments and Mr. Howard's comments that we're going to go ahead and move forward with the proposed trail. The one thing I would like is some sort of security feature be considered.
Like a guard dog?
cameras.
It is near the animal shelter, if that helps.
I would like some sort of cameras maybe in the parking lot when you come in, just so we could see who's coming in and parking somewhere. I think that would be a good safety idea. I know we don't have that problem, but as we consider it.
That's easy. I mean, we've got cameras currently at the pavilion site.
So you could extend one over the parking lot and cover who parks and then goes out and walks on the trail?
We might be able to put a nice zoom camera in and be able to pick it up from the current facility, so,
All right.
current DVR system. So I think we can do that fairly easily. So give me 30 and it will be good.
And Mr.
Yeah.
Shebel,
Okay.
are we going to budget for trash cans and porta potties, that type of thing? Okay.
Okay.
We didn't think about
So
porta
that's the
potties.
motion to move ahead for the original part and then come back to us on video to see what that will cost. And trash cans.
So is the motion
To go ahead.
as written?
To go ahead with the first phase? Yeah. That was
Second.
29. And that was,
Second.
He made a second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
When's the volunteer day?
March 23rd.
We got to mention it every month so everybody
March
remembers.
23rd. Rain date of March 30th.
Can't rain. Can't rain.
Yeah, we've gotten enough rain. All right, item number 8, consideration of a zoning ordinance text amendment to modify definition of horticultural products to include used tires that grow on trees. Mr. Finch.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have a request to consider adding chip tires under the county's horticultural mulch provisions in the M1 zoning district. The question before the board tonight is whether you want to refer that item to the Planning Commission for their review and consideration of an amendment.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Discussion?
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, discussion?
Mr. Fincham, are they going to bring whole tires because the graphite, the steel belts, all the other materials that are in the tires, do those end up in piles someplace? And no, they're making it. Are they making it or selling it?
It's my understanding that they want to do the processing and then sell it, but the applicant is here. You could ask him specifically that question.
That's what I read. And I was concerned about tires being stored,
Chipping, storing.
the storing of the tires with water in them, mosquito-borne kinds of things that we end up with, and then the graphite, the steel belts, and all the other materials in the tire that end up.
But the decision we're making is whether to send it to the Planning Commission or not.
I'm just, before we send it,
But that's their technical expertise to make sure they figure all these things out. And then come back to us with a recommendation. I mean, we're just saying, here, Planning Commission, here's something to look at.
Why didn't you come back?
Because we have to approve those things when they're finished.
We brought it to your attention to see whether the board even wanted to refer this amendment.
That's what we're
I
trying
mean,
to do.
it's here for us, for our concerns, is what I read in the board package.
And you're right to mention your concern and give that to Mr. Fincham, and let's take it to the planning commission with your concern.
I'm concerned that Mrs. Long didn't realize that that she thought they just wanted to sell it, and this is to make it, which is is different.
I'm not going to get in Mrs. Long's head to figure out what she was trying to think, and I don't think it's fair for anybody else, but whatever she was thinking,
No one else
we're just
will
sending
want
it to
to.
the planning commission.
It still has to go to planning commission. We can deny it.
Call the question, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Question's been called. Take your vote. All those in favor to send to the planning commission, please affirm with aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm going to say nay because it's in our board packet. I've never seen something come to us, and then we're going to send it to the planning commission with comments. Those are my comments. I have concerns. I'm going to vote no.
Roll call vote, Mr. Thomas?
I vote aye.
Mr. Black?
I vote aye.
Ms. Long?
How about aye, because I need to research this. Yeah, now I got time. It says definition.
Just
It doesn't say
confirm, you said
manufactured.
you vote aye?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Underwood?
I
Mr.
vote
Seaver?
nay.
I vote aye. Motion carries. Send it to the planning commission.
This one?
All right, item number 9, request for expedited public hearing, RZO 7, 2018, Belmont West, Section 1C, Cool Water Development, LLC.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, if you don't mind. Under normal circumstances, I would not vote for an expedited public hearing where there is no immediate economic impact. However, in this case, without saying whether I am in favor or against this project, I would ask for one only so, if approved, the applicant will be able to meet his time frame. I'm also saying yes because the applicant has agreed to a meeting in February with the Belmont Homeowners Association as another follow-up to make sure their residents are satisfied with what he plans to do at that project. So, based on the results of that February meeting, there may be a very short public hearing advertised on the March date, but I would move for an expedited public hearing under those extenuating circumstances, this one time only.
So I'll boil it down. Your motion is to authorize or approve a public hearing, expedited public hearing, with hopes for it being March 12th.
That's the bottom line, yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind the board that with this, you're simply authorizing the potential for an expedited public hearing.
Right.
It does not obligate the planning commission to act at its first meeting.
Right.
And if it does not obligate the board to act at your March 12th meeting. It
Right.
simply authorizes the potential for that to occur.
And when we're asked for expedited public hearings, the extra cost of advertising is borne by the applicant? Wasn't that the case?
There's no additional cost unless there is a delay in the process and it has to be re-advertised.
Okay.
In which case, there would be additional cost, and that is borne by the applicant.
Question. So if the planning commission doesn't complete this on time, what does that do to our schedule?
You don't have your public hearing until, you cannot hold your public hearing until the planning commission makes its recommendation. Now, it is entirely possible, and it's entirely possible that we have to advertise for the board meeting in anticipation of the planning commission actually making their recommendation, depending on the timing of the advertising dates in the Freelance Star. But even if the planning commission does not vote on it, then you do not hold your public hearing because they have not referred that item to you.
Okay.
Mr.
He
Fincham,
has to convince the planning commission.
is this aggregate of units, is this part of the already approved Belmont?
Yes,
Approved
there is
units?
already an approved project there that allows, I think it's 262 additional units,
It was part of the original Belmont project.
Belmont West.
Just, again, with what we've had on the board, on the agenda for tonight, just curious if it was adding on to that
Yeah, just
already large number.
already there, yes, sir.
All right, any other discussion before we vote? All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion seems to have emptied out. We'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of approving an expedited expedited public hearing for RZ 07 2018, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Thomas? I vote aye. Mr. Black?
I vote nay.
Ms. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood? Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote aye. Motion carried. Down to item 10, Mr. Cully, information on calendar events.
Upcoming this week at 6 p.m., the Community Leaders Reception at the Lodge at AP Hill. As mentioned earlier, 6 p.m., the annual Fire and Rescue Awards Banquet at Bowling Green Town Hall. Next Thursday, the 31st January at 11 is Vaco County Government Day at the Omni in downtown Richmond. If any of y'all are going, you need to have Pam get you signed up for that.
I think we're past the deadline to sign up.
You might be, but sometimes they will take your money and add you to the list. But we'll see if anybody wants to go.
We got to pay this year. Look at it.
That's a box lunch or something. Yes. As been mentioned earlier, pray for good sunny weather. February 2nd at 10, the Polar Bear Plunge. Our next meeting is the 12th, as we mentioned earlier. Annual banquet for Ladysmith Volunteer Fire Department is the 16th at Lake Caroline Lodge. And then don't forget the President's Day holiday on the 18th. So that's basically our schedule of things that are upcoming on the February calendar.
All right, with that,
Hey, can I ask Mr. Cully a question on legislative day? Mr. Cully, we were at the sheriff's behest trying to do something with parking, be added to the parking. Who was taking the lead on that? Because I talked to the sheriff and he wasn't doing anything, and I thought staff was going to take care of that. And I'm wondering now, since we're in session, what's going on? Did we just...
I think when that came, when did we talk about that? December?
We approved it in December, I think.
I don't know that anything's been entered on that or not.
Yeah, when I saw Ms. Hall's note about legislative day, I called the sheriff, which was last week, and he said he wasn't following up on it and hadn't asked the legislators. So I was wondering if anybody had contacted, more than likely, Buddy Fowler's office. To Buddy Fowler?
All of them.
And we have response? We had a response?
I haven't seen anything.
Oh, okay.
We'll follow up tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll make another,
Just to make sure, because I thought the sheriff was going to lead the charge, but I guess he thought the county was, so I just wanted to follow up to make sure. Thank you.
all right, that's the end of our agenda. We have any closing board comments? Mr. Thomas?
Can I talk about Verizon again?
If you'd like.
Just, I don't have a problem with Verizon. I would like to see them do more towers in the more rural parts of the county.
I'll second that. Mr. Black?
I think I've mentioned the Polar Bear Plunge. All the organizations have paid except for one. But anyway, just want to let you guys know that. But anyway, yes, so there's 14 organizations that have, yes. But I just wanted to, hey, just be quiet. But anyway, I do appreciate that. And Mr. Parton, Mr. Parton, I don't know, we're out of order here. Mr. Parton said he was going in the water too, so I'll see you guys there.
Ms. Long?
I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the Fire Awards banquet on Saturday.
Is there a polar bear plunge this year?
Mr. Underwood?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley?
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
And I have none other than have a good week. Stay warm.
Motion to adjourn.
We are, that's right.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.